Hi friends, glad you're here today. This is just a review video on how to factor trinomial, since it may have been a while since you've done that, and a large part of our chapter is going to rely on us being able to factor. So everyone factors a little bit differently. If you watch other videos on the interwebs, you might see something different. This is just the way I do it. So when we're factoring a trinomial, if we look to see if there's a greatest common factor first, we know that there's not, then we are going to find the two things that are going to multiply to give us the coefficient that's out here. So this x squared doesn't have a number in front, which means its coefficient is 1. So 1 and 1 are the only factors of x squared. And then we're going to look to see what are the factors of 40. Now I like to list these in order, so that way I know when I've found them all and I don't accidentally miss something. So factors of 40 are 1 and 40, 2 and 20, doesn't divide by 3, 4 and 10, 5 and 8, doesn't divide by 6 or 7, and this is the reason I like to write them in order, because 6 and 7 fall in between 8, which means we've created a loop, and I know I've found all of my factors. The next thing I do is I look at what kind of signs I'm going to need. So because this is multiplying to a positive, I have two choices, either plus plus or minus minus. And looking at the rest of this problem, I can see that there's only positives in it, so plus plus is going to be the option I want to use. So now I'm ready to factor it. So 1 and 1, so 1x and 1x. And then I'm going to look through these and either randomly guess and then check it, or use a little logical thinking. I know for sure I need a plus and a plus because we've already determined that. So now we're just going to play with some numbers. If you are multiplying 1 times something and 1 times something, we need these two things to add to 13. So I like to kind of sometimes write the numbers down here, like 10 and 4, then it doesn't feel like I'm fully committed to it yet. So if I put a 10 and a 4 there, that'll give me 10x and 4x, which is 14, really close to 13, but not quite what we want. So we can always try switching the 10 and the 4, but in this case, since we're still going to be multiplying by 1, it's not going to change what it equals. So I'm going to use a different set of numbers. And you might already be shouting at your screen, we need to use 5 and 8. Let's check it out. So 1x times 5 will give me 5x, and 8 times 1x will give me 8x, and 8x plus 5x will give me that 13 we were looking for. So now we know for sure that we need an 8 and a 5. So this trinomial, it's a quadratic because of the squared, which means its highest degree is 2, is x plus 8 times x plus 5. Okay, so let's try another one. If our problem was this, x squared minus 9x minus 22, and we use the same procedure, this is an x squared by itself, which means it has a 1 in front, so the only things that are going to multiply to 1 are 1 and 1. And then if I go down to 22, 1 and 22, 2 and 11, those are actually the only factors of 22, so that's all we got. Now if we think about our signs, we're trying to multiply to a negative 22, so we need one positive and one negative. We're not sure which order they'll go in yet or with which numbers it'll combine, but we definitely need one positive and one negative. So the only way to get x squared is going to be 1x and 1x, and then we look at our numbers. You might be able to do this one in your head and know that 1 and 22 will not give you a 9, so it's going to have to be the 2 and the 11. Doesn't actually matter which order your 2 and your 11 go, since both of these are 1x and 1x. But what does matter is where our plus and our minus go. So we need a negative 9x, which means we need, when we add, the bigger number to be negative. So if 1x times 11 is 11x, we need this one to be negative because it's bigger than 2x. So it's going to be negative 11 and positive 2. So the two problems we've done so far have had a leading coefficient of 1. So I want to look at a couple problems. What happens when our leading coefficient is bigger than 1? So if we have 15x squared plus 7x minus 2. So same procedure, look at 15. What are the factors of 15? 1 and 15, 3 and 5. And what are the factors of 2? 1 and 2. And then what kind of signs do we need if we're trying to multiply to a negative? One positive, one negative. So we're ready to start throwing things in here. Now, on the last couple of problems, there was only one way to get this x squared thing, but now we have a couple ways to get 15. So I'm actually going to hold off on that for just a second. Since there's only one way to get 2, I know for sure we're going to need a 2 and a 1. And we're going to have to play with these signs here in a minute. So keeping in mind that these outside 2 and these inside 2 are going to add together to give me 7, we can start playing with these numbers. So if I put the 15 here and the 1 here, that will give me 15x and 1x. That'll give me 15x and 2x. Can a 15 and a 2 give me a 7? Nope. So what we can do before we switch to our new numbers, make this one the 1 and this one the 15. Now before, switching the order didn't matter because both of them, we were multiplying both of them by 1. But here we were going to be multiplying that 15 by a 2 this time, which is actually going to change its value. So this now would be 30 and that would be 1. Still not going to give me 7. So now we're going to switch to completely new numbers. So 3 and 5. So this gives me 3x. This gives me 10x. Can a 3 and a 10 give me a 7? Yes, if we subtract them. So that means we've got our 3 and our 5 in the right spot. So 3x and 5x. All we have to do is figure out what kind of signs do we need. So we were talking about 10 and 3 will subtract to give me 7, which means you need one positive and one negative. And so we just have to decide which one of these gets the positive and which one gets the negative. So when you add or subtract, you always keep the sign of the bigger number. So since we want the answer to be 7, that means our bigger number has to be the positive. So positive 2 times positive 5 will give me positive 10. And we want this one to be our negative. So 3x times negative 1 will give me negative 3. All right, last one. 4x squared plus 29x plus 30. So both of these numbers, 4 and 30, are called composite, which means there are multiple sets of factors that will multiply out to these numbers. Before, even when we had the number 2 in our last problem, 2 was prime, there was only one thing that multiplied to 2. 15 was composite because there were multiple things, 1 and 15, 3 and 5. So we're going to have to do a little thinking on this problem. So what multiplies to 4? 1 and 4, 2 and 2. What multiplies to 30? 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 and nothing, 5 and 6. And if you go in order, you can see now I've created my loop. I know I'm done finding my factors. Now, we're going to try to multiply to a positive, which means our signs can be positive, positive, or negative, negative. But looking at the rest of my problem, I only have positives in it, which means I'm going to have to use positive, positive. Now from here, we're going to do a little straight guess and check. So pick one, plug it in, see if it worked. So I like to always start with the two numbers that are closest together. I find that that's usually the numbers that work, so that's always where I start, and if I get lucky, awesome. If not, I just kind of work out from there. So if I leave this as a 2x and this as a 2x, then I'm trying to get 29 with those two parts. So I'm going to use the 6 and the 5 first and see if that works out. So if this is 6 and this is 5, this will give me 10x and 12x, which is close but not quite 29, that's 22. Now here, if I switch the 6 and the 5, nothing's going to change because we're multiplying by the same number, 2 times 5 and 2 times 6, no matter where they are. So I'm actually going to switch to a different set of numbers. I'm going to try 10 and 3. So if I do 10 and 3, that's going to be 20 and 6. So closer, we're at 26 now instead of 29. So now I'm going to try switching my order. 10 and 3. But again, that's not going to do me any good because that's still 20 and that's still 6. Okay, so try our next set, 15 and 2. So this guy would give me 30, and this would give me 4. That's 34. It's not going to work. So I'm guessing right now, based on my pattern, that 2 and 2 is not going to work. So I'm going to try changing out my 2 and 2 to a 1 and a 4. All right, so we can stay with the 15 and 2 if we want, or we can go back down to the 5 and the 6 and see if those work. So here, this gives me 6x, and this gives me 20x, so I'm at that 26 mark again. Now this time if I switch the 5 and the 6, something will actually change because we're not multiplying by the same number. Here 6 was being multiplied by 1, but if I move it here, it's going to get multiplied by 4. So now we've got 5x on the outside here and 24 on the inside, and that actually gives us 29. So we know that we're going to have plus plus, and now we know for sure the 6 goes here and the 5 goes there. You can always FOIL this out, multiply it out, distribute it out to make sure it equals this exact answer here. If you have extra questions, please let me know.